Hi, this is John at Roboflow, and I'm here to show you advanced annotation shortcuts for the annotation tool. So I'll go ahead and remove this bounding box here so we can show you some stuff. It's really common for you to be switching between the drag tool and the bounding box tool. So if I create a bounding box, I'm going to go ahead and hit B. If I want to switch to the drag tool, I can hit D. So I'll switch to the bounding box tool to create a bounding box here. And if I wanted to switch to the drag tool, I can just hit D, and now I'm able to manipulate this bounding box here. I'll go ahead and hit escape, which is a shortcut in order to basically remove or delete a in progress bounding box, and that'll get us back to where we started. If you want to switch between the drag tool and the bounding box tool temporarily, you can always hit command or hold down command if you are on an OS X computer, or hold control if you're on a Windows PC. So if I am currently in bounding box mode, as it shows you here, if I hold down command, now I can drag things. And the same goes if I'm in the opposite. So if I'm in the drag tool, I can temporarily hold down commands and drag for more bounding boxes. The next thing I'll show you guys is zoom controls. So normally you can use the plus and the minus icons here in order to affect zoom, but you can also just use plus and minus on your keyboard. That's pretty self-explanatory. If I want to zero back out, I can always just hit 0, and that'll get me back to the original zoom that we used. Now, in order to switch between images, what you can do is use these arrows right here, but I can also just use my left and right arrow keys as well. So that will allow me to switch between images relatively quickly. Now, combining those two, we can use a more advanced shortcut called zoom lock. So zoom lock is great for situations where, let's say I have something that I want to annotate in this upper left corner here, but it's going to be across a bunch of images. Normally what I would have to do is I would have to change the image, and then I would have to zoom in repeatedly for every single image I wanted to change. But with zoom lock, that becomes a lot easier. So I'll go ahead and zoom in to this upper left corner, and then I'll hit this lock icon right here to use zoom lock. So now whenever I switch images, I'm going to be locked into this upper left corner where I can do an annotation, switch image, do an annotation, switch image. It's really useful for that kind of use case. I'll go ahead and undo zoom lock and then zero back out. So let's go and cover annotation shortcuts for existing annotations. So let's say I'm back here and I create a new annotation. I'll go ahead and create this new class. So I can just type in Mercedes and hit enter, and that'll create this class for me. So you can see that's labeled as Mercedes. But let's say I want to actually label this with an existing class. So I'll go ahead and click this guy, and you can see that we can actually use number hotkeys for existing classes. So if I wanted to switch it back to a Formula One car, for example, I would just type in 2 and then hit enter, and now it's labeled back to a Formula One car. The other way that you can do that is if I select this again, instead of using the number hotkeys, you can also just use the arrow hotkeys to go up and down, and that will allow you to toggle between classes. So I'll switch this back to Mercedes now. In case you forget any of these annotation shortcuts, you can always remind yourself by going to this menu in the upper left corner, and it has all of the shortcuts that we went over, including a few extras. And that was advanced annotation shortcuts for the annotation tool.